Hey, good morning, Robert. I've got a demo here. It's not going to be a quick one because there's three sabers, but it's going to be for your Watto's Junkyard Regional Manager, so both halves of the mall staff, right? And then I've also got your Lux and Watto's Ventress Saber. This particular one, we'll just go over this one first because it's easier than the other two. I had already installed this for someone else, and you had bought it from them, and then you wanted this weathered, so you sent it to me. I uninstalled it, sent it out to get weathered with the other two from the same person, and then it came back and I reinstalled it. And then I looked over the switch section, right, because you had this white switch section inside of a little baggie, and it had one of these fins broken. But what I remember from the person that I had done this for originally was he actually had two of these white things, and it looked like one broke, right? And then I didn't see that one in the box. I just saw this one, and this one is fine. As you can see, all the fins fit into this control box. This is probably one of the most finicky control boxes I've done in the hundreds of sabers that I've installed, right? It's not the best, but I think they're coming out with a new version of this saber and specifically have changed up the control box a little bit, right? And it may just be me. I'm not saying it's terrible. I'm just saying I've had the most issue with this. So it does work fine. You do have to press it a little tough, and you have to press it in the right spot, okay? But I got it to stay on here. Everything's good. This does have a crystal chamber that it had before, so you can, hopefully you may be able to see that quartz crystal, but we'll light it up here in a second. That's a real quartz crystal in there. Stock V3s in there. And then how you get to everything is just want to unscrew the handle. Now I don't have a 7/8 inch blade currently. I've got some material coming to make one, but all of these were tested outside of the saber and everything works fine. So we will have to do this demo and not have a blade today, all right? But you just want to unscrew this handle. This comes out. You had asked for a little bit of weathering on your chassis, so that's what I did here. This is my chassis design that I tried to make match the saber with the hole, with all the perforated holes, right? So you got a removable battery there, more of that over here, and then your Proffie board right here. In the future, if you go to put any more sound fonts on here or mess with your config, you will need to lift up the board. When you go to put it back down, though, I would suggest using just a little bit of E6000, a little bit of something like that. This little tube, I get it from Hobby Lobby. I think I've seen it at Walmart too. I mean, you can get this stuff anywhere. It's a lot better than super glue because it will hold down the board tight. But if you ever had to pop it up again, it does come loose. It's like a hard rubbery substance, okay? But then you've got 28 millimeter Smuggler's Outpost dark side speaker in this guy. So to show you everything's working, we'll throw a battery in. All right, we'll go ahead and screw this handle on. As you probably know, because you had the saber before, everything is a tight fit, but it does fit. It was just a lot to do to be able to stack the board and the battery on each other, and then 28 millimeter speaker too, right? So put that on there, lock it down, all lined up. Come over here and hit power. And now you can see your crystal. Now auxiliary, it has to be pressed. There is a sweet spot and you'll find it. But it has to be pressed in that sweet spot and you'll get it. If you want blade lock up, you have to hold down auxiliary and hit the saber. And you get blade lock up until you let go of it. You can turn this one off by twisting it or just hitting the power. Now the sweet spot for that auxiliary switch is going to be about right here, right off center from the middle, but down below, because the top is your activation and back here is your auxiliary button. Play around with that a little bit. You'll find the sweet spot. Like I said, this white SLS piece or whatever it is that's been printed, I think it's SLS. It's a little finicky, all right? So I'm excited to see what they come out with their new version. All right, but we'll go ahead and we'll take the handle off this one and pop the battery out. Whoops. This one has full motion controls per the specs of the previous owner, okay? So we'll take the battery out of there. I'll throw this back on. And we'll put this off to the side. Everything's working fine here. Well, let's talk about these regional managers, both halves, because they were pretty much identical in what I ran into, though they are different with the issues slightly. Okay. Like the weathering job, it may look different than the original weathering job that you saw when you had this sent out. A lot of this weathering came off on my hands when I was installing the Saber. The weathering was not sealed in. All right, so I'm not here to call anyone out. I'm not going to say any names, but this is my demo, and I have to tell you everything that's going on with this Saber before I send it to you, because in the end, right, I'm liable for everything because I'm the last one that touched it. But anyway, typically what you do when you weather with aluminum black, and that's what this was weathered with, after you were done getting the look that you wanted, you would go and you'd seal it with a matte clear coat. You could do 1 or 2. I put a light coat on here now for you. It was easy to do on these because my chassis comes all the way out, so there's no electronics. I was not able to do it on the Ventress because the electronics stay inside the Saber. So I could not seal this guy at all for you. Okay. And obviously you can tell up here, I didn't have to touch that grill section very much and the weathering stayed on. But where I had to handle it here to install it, because this entire switch section comes out, it wore down a little bit as well. All right. Yeah, my hands were pretty black by the time I got done. Anyways, typically you would get it, you know, how you want it to look. Go in with a matte clear coat. It doesn't matter what brand, but just a matte clear coat spray paint, and do like 1 or 2 light coats and call it a day. And that's usually enough. And then also what I found was that instead of putting the aluminum black on the outside of these hilts to weather them, they look like they were entirely dipped in the solution. And the reason I say that is because I actually had my chassis all installed and ready for these before these ever came to me. Because when you had first talked to me about doing these, I was like, oh yeah, you know, that's fine. I've done these 5 or 6 times. I went ahead and I printed out the chassis. I installed them, tested them out. They were great. Really, all I was expecting to do when they showed up at my door was just slide my chassis in, make this demo for you, and call it a day. That was not the case. My chassis wouldn't even fit in this guy. Out of pure stubbornness, I tried to sand one of them. I spent over 2 hours sanding it. I finally got it to barely fit in, but it wasn't the type that I'd want to send it out. It just wasn't acceptable. And in the end, I ended up taking my chassis design that I have for these guys. Normally, I knocked a little bit of the dimensions off for the diameter so that they would fit in here properly, and now they're good to go. Although there is a slight difference between the two of them, although they have identical chassis, right? But let's take it out first. You see your pommel back here, and we'll talk about that. Just come over here and carefully unscrew this guy. Takes a little bit, but then it'll come out. So on each of these, I took out the red crystal that you want me to take out. I designed a crystal for the pommel and I printed it in clear resin. So now you can light this up however you want, right? I do have by default this pixel as red, and you'll see that here in a second. But this will take any color you want. All right, so we're going to set that off to the side. Come over here. You can put your finger in the emitter, but do not press on the pins. Try to press on the side of the chassis or something. There's plenty of room when you feel around in there. So just push. And this is the one that's a little bit different than the other one. It's a little tight. Push it like that, a little bit more until it kind of pops out the back. There's about a 1/2 inch of tightness in there that you got to push past, and then you can pull the chassis out. The reason for that is, like I said, these guys were dipped inside of the solution. It's nice and shiny in there now, but I had to take both of these and clean them out with a coarse file, with a round file. I used some steel Brillo. I used some Scotch Brite pads. I probably spent an hour apiece on each of these, cleaning out the inside so that the chassis would fit freely and it would float freely, because there were inconsistencies in the diameter because of how the aluminum black ate up the metal, and it was also kind of caked on inside the Saber. All right, so these are pretty clean now. This one, like I said, is a little bit tighter than the other one. These are 1-button setups. your one switch is right here. It's this button. This is not on a spring. So when you put the chassis back in, you're going to have to be careful, and I'll show you how to do that. All right, but on your actual chassis, this is what you've got. This is I printed this out of gray PLA, and then I went back and I kind of darkened it with some black acrylic paint. But you've got two NeoPixel accents here for the two LED lens, or for the two lenses in your Saber, right? So you got one here and one here. I wanted to light both of those up, and then of course your third NeoPixel accent will sit right behind this crystal, right? And then you could, light that up, like I said, anywhere you want. You've got a removable battery setup, spring side over here. This is a 24mm Smuggler's Outpost speaker. Your Proffie board is adhesed down to the shelf, but you've got access to your micro USB and your SD card without ever moving the board. So full board access. And then they all have the stock V3s for your NeoPixel connector. All right. So we're going to throw a battery in this guy too. We'll go over these one by one. And turn this off. You can see how I got these kind of doing this. They're both doing a little something different, and then the back is doing something different as well. You'll find a copy of the config file that I used on all of these SD cards. All right. Now you can see your single switch right here. You're going to want to make sure to line that up with these switches when you're putting it in. And because your activation, or because your one switch is not on a spring, you're going to want to lift it up as you're putting the chassis in. All right. So it can catch in that groove, and then it will go in the rest of the way. And then you will have to come in here with your thumb and push it all the way in, and it should go past the threads. All right. And I have all these LEDs on a timer, so that way if you don't turn these Sabers on right away, they'll just turn off on you and not drain your battery. But once you get that past the threads, you can come through and you can screw on your pommels. We'll screw that in. Screw it in all the way. You can put these pommels on, or you can put the couplers on to make staffs out of these. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to test these individually. But you can take the two maul halves, obviously, and make the regional manager staff, or you can take one of these halves and you can screw the coupler on to the Ventress, and you can make that staff as well. That's how these are designed, but I'm sure you knew that already. But anyway, just so I said it, right? So we got that screwed in all the way. Now we can come over here and hit activation. And you can see how that crystal lights up very bright, right? It's red, but you can light it up however you like. And you got these doing their thing. I'll turn this off real quick and we'll talk about your sound. One thing you can do to improve sound that I did not do, I left it on here for aesthetics, but there is a rubber O-ring right here, and it is actually covering up your sound venting holes. So you can take that off if you want. You can cut it off. You can roll it off this way, but just come this way with it towards the pommel, and that will increase your sound value. All right, I'm just leaving them on there for now for aesthetics. But you can see how I've got these doing a little something when the Saber's off. That guy's doing something. You can adjust this when the Sabers, or like when the chassis is in, however you want. And then a long press changes your sound font. You got your LEDs firing up in there. Just tapping it for blaster bolt deflects. You'll get reactions out of all of your LEDs that way. Crystal 2. And for a blade lockup, you want to hold down the button and hit the Saber. And you'll see that here as well. And it will stay like that until you let go. Just like that, right? And then we can just hold this down and turn it off. And then we'll go ahead and we'll take this guy out and go over the other one. So the other one, the chassis goes in and out a lot easier because the effect that the aluminum black had on the inside of the Saber was a lot different than this one. Okay. So again, take that out. You can still see that resin crystal shines very nicely. Take this out, come over here again with your finger and push a little tough, just like that. It's not hard. And pull this out. From the positive side of the battery by your NeoPixel connector, you should be able to pop it out with your finger just like that. And so before we get into the other one, I won't put these together yet. I'll put this over here and I'll put them back together at the end of the video so that you can see me take this apart too, right? So this is all the same. It's an identical setup. The only thing being, like I said, the inside of this particular saber was affected a little less drastically. So the chassis is a lot smoother on this guy. I'll take that out. Same clear resin crystal on this one. I put a little clear coat on the back of these resins, or back of these resin crystals, so that it would shine more brightly. So that's why that's a little shiny like that. But this guy right here will fall right out into your hand. Now, if you take measurements like I did with my calipers, both of these chassis are exactly the same, and I've used them 6, 7, 8 times on these sabers. So they're all consistent, but you'll notice right away the difference. I did go through and I cleaned this up with not steel wool or anything. I just used like the green, I forget what it's called, like a green Brillo pad. I cleaned it up a little bit and it's nice and shiny in there now. I did have some gunk in there, but it wasn't too bad. I think most of it was at the very back where that lip is, where it changes from this diameter into the blade diameter, right? So I went through there and kind of cleaned that up. So hopefully you can see that. Same exact chassis design though, with your two, I'm doing this backwards, with your two NeoPixel accents, your third NeoPixel accent here, your board and your board access, same size speaker and same removable battery with your stock V3 in there as well. Okay, same one switch setup right here. So you got that one little tactile switch right there. So we'll throw a battery in this guy too. These are programmed the same, so you'll notice that. Whoops. If I turn this off, everything's doing the same thing, right? So when you can get in there and change whatever you want, you'll notice every sound font has 4 blade styles and they go in order. So your first blade style will be your main blade. Your second blade style will be this NeoPixel accent closest to the blade. Your third blade style is this accent, and your fourth blade style is your crystal on both. Okay. So we'll throw this in too. Again, we're going to want to lift up that switch because it's not on a spring. It'll slide right in just like that. You'll know you're all the way in when you push that past the threads. We can come over here and screw our pommel on. One thing I forgot to mention too is this little greebly back here, right? When you tighten this down, it locks in that pommel piece, or it locks in the coupler for the staff. So before you go to unscrew this, you want to make sure this piece is loose. Otherwise, it's not going to come out properly. All right. I always forget this. That's why I just kind of leave it loose, right? So I don't have to worry about it. But we can come over here and hit activation as well. And again, you can see how these lenses light up. You got your crystal lighting up very nicely. Your NeoPixel connector, very nice. Now let me turn this off real quick and tell you. I didn't glue down the nut for the switch, and the nut on the inside of the handle is square. And this switch channel right here, if you can see that, it's made to accept that square nut, but it has to slide in there just right. And the reason I did that was so that you could come through and you could adjust this switch if you needed to, right? Like if it needed to be a little tighter, tighten it up. If you wanted a little bit loose, you can do that. All the while that channel is holding that nut. Blade lock up. And we let go of it, and then hold it to turn it off. And a long press again to change sound fonts. I would highly recommend when you get these, just cut this O-ring off, right? That way you have better sound. Just like that. Then we'll go ahead and we'll turn this guy off too. And we'll take the chassis out of this one. I could probably just do that off camera because I just showed you how to do it on the other one. But that's basically your 3 sabers, the reason why I took so long, and then you know, everything else. So if you got any questions on these installs, let me know. If not, I will package these up today, but we'll probably won't have them out until tomorrow. Okay, thanks.